Welcome to Journeys with the No Schedule Man, exploring authentic stories of personal growth and lessons learned from people living true to themselves with creativity, passion, and purpose. For all past episodes, subscribe on iTunes or visit noscheduleman.com. And please connect, share, and contribute with a comment, rating, or review. And now, here's your host, the No Schedule Man, Kevin Bulmer.
I've been known to struggle with reality, not that it is any real mystery.
The question this week is, how in touch are you with who you really are and what you really want to be doing? Are you going through life admirably enough, doing all the things you feel you should be doing? Or are you absolutely certain that you're on the path for which you are uniquely suited, in touch with the kind of life and work that will continue to light up your soul for as long as you're here? Welcome. I'm Kevin Bulmer. This is Journeys with the No Schedule Man, helping to create positive change by exploring and sharing authentic conversations on personal and professional growth. You can find all the past episodes of this podcast around the world on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and at noschedulemanpodcast.com. And if you'd like to continue the conversation with me on a daily basis, I invite you to join me in my online community. It's called the Turtle Tribe. You can visit theturtletribe.com and learn everything you need to know there. Now back to the question, how in touch with you, or how in touch are you with who you really are? Along those lines, we're joined today by Alina Calinescu, who has an interesting story to tell about her journey in getting back in touch with herself and what she's really meant to do. At the time that Alina and I crossed paths, she has been serving as a yoga teacher, therapist, and educator, as well as an iRest teacher in training. I'll expand upon iRest in just a moment. But like so many other people that have joined me on this program, there seems to have been a first chapter to Alina's story, and then a change in trajectory leading to where we are now. So Alina worked in the corporate world as an engineer until just a little over a decade ago, when she followed what she called a gut feel and made a change in her career to focus more on fitness, yoga, and meditation. Now, she originally followed the footsteps of her dad growing up in Romania. He was an engineer. And so she became an engineer. But then once she reached a stage a little bit later in life, she got introduced to exercise, going to the gym, and everything began to change for her. Now, with teaching fitness, yoga, and meditation, what she loves to teach the most is iRest, which is short for Integrative Restoration. It's a form of yoga nidra. Now, Alina has let me know that iRest can work to alleviate stress, to help us sleep better, and to heal unresolved issues. It can also allow us to recognize an underlying peace of mind that's always present within us, no matter what circumstances we may be facing in life. Now, it's interesting, to me anyway, so many people that I know and love and trust have mentioned Yoga Nidra meditation to me in years previous to now. I mean, I can go, probably 5-6 years ago is the first time I remember hearing about Yoga Nidra and having that suggested to me. I found the name confusing. When I hear the term yoga, I'm thinking about down dog, tree pose, up dog, low lunge, all that kind of stuff. But this is very much a form of meditation, and I can see how it can be transformational. A short time after the conversation that Alina and I had, which you're just about to hear, she invited me out to one of her iRest Yoga Nidra meditation sessions, and I gratefully accepted, and I went, and all I can tell you is that I can't wait to go back. It was an absolutely incredible, profound experience, one of the fastest hours in my life that was so successful at taking me out of my own head and stepping away from that constant chatter and stream of thoughts that plagues me in between my own ears on a day-to-day and a moment-to-moment basis, that it was really extraordinary. And that was just the first time that I had ever tried it. So take that for what you will, but something that you can keep in mind as you listen through the rest of the conversation. I was really fascinated to hear Alina talk about her journey, and so much of what she said really resonated with me. Here are a few of the bullet points. She talked about the challenge of pacing herself, Now, here I am, a guy whose online community is called the Turtle Tribe. It's all about patience and honoring your own journey and going at your own pace. But even though I can see the value of that and share that notion with others, I still find that to be such a challenge in my own life. Alina felt the same. She talked about what she calls the indigestion of thought. That struck me as a really interesting phrase. I knew exactly what she meant. I have that. She talked about I rest, yoga nidra, and other forms of fitness and meditation as a way of touching base with what is all right within us. So I think it's natural for us to gravitate toward focusing on the things that we haven't yet done, that we aren't yet experiencing, that we haven't yet acquired or achieved. But what about casting our attention back to what is all right? What's just fine already, right now, within us? Simple, but a pretty extraordinary thing to experience if we can turn our attention inwards. She talked about developing and nurturing patience and trust. She also mentioned about how she got to the point where she would remind herself to stop apologizing for her choices. This is something that I've been spending more and more time considering, reflecting upon in my own journey over the last many months. The word regret comes to mind when I think back about my own life's journey. I have regrets. There are things I wish I had done differently, things I wish that I had done that I passed over, or times when I wished I'd been more patient. However, I could also argue that if I had not done the things that I did and experienced what I did, then I wouldn't be the person that I am today. But it all comes back to what I just mentioned about Alina, where she got to the point where she would remind herself to stop apologizing for her choices. And I point that out as something that really resonated with me, and maybe that's something that will resonate with you as well. I also really loved about how she described what she does as, quote, part science and part art. I really, really loved that. I hope you can relate to Alina's journey as well and take something valuable away. I bet you will. Here is Alina Calinescu on Journeys with the No Schedule Man. Alina, how would you describe a human body engineer?
Oh, we're starting with a heavy-duty question. I love that. So whereas engineering, like traditional engineering education, meets anatomy and meets the human body knowledge of anatomy and kinesiology. So I happen to believe that the human body is one fabulous masterpiece of universe, or whoever you believe in, engineering. So we're engineered to be amazingly functional and to tap into that possibility of being functional while exerting the least amount of effort if possible.
We did dive right into the deep end, didn't we? There's a lot to explore there. So,
absolutely.
What was it that you just said? The most amount of function with the least amount of effort possible?
Absolutely. So that comes from putting the body into what, when we were little children, toddlers, or young adults, would come natural to us.
Can you give me an example?
Absolutely. So you hear often in fitness or yoga or Pilates setting, suck your belly and drop the shoulders, do this, do that. That's what I like to call is a sad life to live. So if I need to suck my belly in my entire life, can I breathe? Can I smile? Can I function? Is my brain functioning? Or am I just consumed by the sucking my belly in so I can look fit and I can be strong?
In one of the speeches that I give, a central part of it is that the first part of my life I had an operating system. That's what I call it, a belief system, a thought pattern of what it meant to be a winner and noble and a good person and responsible, that I sum up in 3 words, which are suck it up. So when I hear you saying about sucking your belly in and not being able to breathe, I wish we'd had this conversation probably 2 decades before we did, but I'm guessing you hear that from people a lot. How close to the truth is that?
I wasn't there 2 decades back. I was probably one of the people sucking my belly in, holding my breath, and hoping for the best.
Well, let's go back to that. Even before a decade ago, when you really honored a gut feel, if you wouldn't mind, Alina, take me back further than that and tell me a little bit about growing up and what were some of the things in your mind, in your life, that you thought you wanted to do with your life. What were you interested in?
Well, I grew up in Romania. That's a communist country back in that day. Mm-hmm. There were not many options when good parenting was involved. So you needed to really shine through by being a teacher, a doctor, an accountant, somebody that goes maybe to work and has a big aura of glamour, which involves income and, I don't know, people being proud of your achievements. I did have a brief moment of thinking that I would want to be a doctor, but then when I realized how much memorizing involves being a doctor, I was like, so when do you start thinking? Before memorizing or after memorizing? And I followed kind of in my father's footsteps of becoming an engineer, as it seemed that engineering was more about thinking at that time than being a doctor.
So what decision did you make initially in moving your life forward at that time?
Well, what do you know when you're in your 20s? You know pretty much what you're being conditioned by society, school system, and family. You're really not yet maybe ready to break the shell, break free, and become your own person. So you're thinking, okay, if I go to school for a few years and I'm an engineer, then I'm going to start living. And I'm going to be free.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about you. When I was in my early 20s, I thought I knew everything. I don't feel that way about it anymore. I can tell you that for sure. But interesting, my dad was also an engineer. I didn't grow up in Romania, but we do share a similarity in that respect. Mm-hmm. Well, so which path did you choose to start moving your life forward professionally into your 20s?
Well, I started working as an engineer in Romania. In the meantime, the communists disappeared and created some void for people to start being more entrepreneurial. I started working in my field of choice of chemical engineering. And I realized that, playing with chemicals was maybe not the best necessarily place for me to be. And I started playing with cosmetics and making other products with bringing my know-how into other businesses. Then it came to the point that my husband was working with General Motors with the locomotives here in London, and he had an opportunity to travel a couple of times and see how it's like here. My sister moved to Canada. Her husband started working here. Then she started to work here, and we were thinking, well, why the heck not? Let's just try, start fresh and see if we can do something else with our lives. So we decided to apply for free immigration in Canada, which is quite a lengthy process and quite expensive process because you need to bring funding with you to support yourself. And right before Y2K, we came to Canada when everybody was freaking out about the Y2K.
So that didn't, clearly that didn't hold you back. What was that experience like?
It was very interesting. Just the cultural differences and everything that is different, and having only basically one person that you know, which was my sister and her family, and starting fresh. It was a good part though for my husband. He started to work in a couple of weeks, and that took a little bit of pressure off. But it took me over a year, about 14 months, to find a job in Canada. And it was just spinning the wheels between, do you have Canadian experience? No. Where do I start having Canadian experience? Or you're way overqualified for this job. And it took quite a bit and quite a gamble from a brave soul that was running a business here in London to give me an opportunity to get started. But then I got into a pattern that every engineering or supervising job would be lasting an average 2.5 years. And then you would be out looking for a job again. And at some point, fitness came into my life. I've never been to a gym until I was in my 40s, believe it or not. And I started because I was in a business course in the Canadian Institute of Management to enhance my business skills. And one of the individuals in the course that I was working in group projects kind of threw a challenge at me. It's like, why don't we go to the gym together and see if you can take it? I was like, okay, let's go and let's see how it goes. And actually, that was one of the most important days in my life when I started to understand how much better somebody's life could be through movement.
Let me hold you there for a moment if we can, because you've said a number of things already that really have me wondering how they maybe combine to lead you up to the moment that you just described of discovery of how much better you can feel when you do something like exercising your body. You mentioned a term earlier, Alina, the aura of glamour, and not being, chasing after what I would maybe call external things, or following maybe a map or what we think is a script of the way that we're supposed to do life to make ourselves happy and to be successful. You described wondering about, whether to be a doctor, and then ultimately following in the path of your dad with being an engineer and the evolution of that. But then that whole situation of moving from Romania to an entirely different country here in Canada, where all of a sudden, all of the context of all of that has changed. Even in as much as it maybe makes sense to us at that point, you talked about, maybe the mismatch of qualifications in the process and all that. And I'm wondering how going through that, if you can think back to what it was like at that time for you, affected your thoughts about yourself and the decisions that you had made for yourself at that point, and maybe the decisions that you were going to make going forward, because all of a sudden even everything that you thought you knew was maybe being measured a little bit differently because the environment was different. How did that feel at that time?
Well, for the first 14 months of trying to find a job and going through the interviewing process and having a whole bunch of no's coming back to me, I was wondering how long can we really go ahead with one income, and how long, if I'm out of the workforce, how long until not only am I overqualified, I am not current anymore and I can't really work in maybe in the field that I have been trained in.
Right.
So it's not an easy process to immigrate and to adapt and adjust yourself to the new environment and the new requirements. And even when you start your first job here, it can be quite intimidating. And it can be quite, we evolved a lot since 18 years ago when I was starting to work here. There was quite a bit of intimidation in the workplace. Imagine that I started to work as a production supervisor and my entire crew was males. And I got to hear some harsh words and I got to hear some judgmental words. And I had to stick for myself and to create some new boundaries in a crew that was not necessarily used to work with women. And when a woman comes and tells them what to do, then it was a tough place to be for the first couple of months.
So with all of that as the context, let's go back to where you were a few moments ago, where you described going to the gym and getting some exercise. How would you describe what you felt as sort of the seeds of what you were realizing about yourself at that time, and the possibility that you were just the door was opening just a crack to the possibility that you sensed was there? What did it feel like?
Well, it just felt like I was like a little kid in a candy store, that I wanted a little sample of everything so I can kind of figure out what is it that I like. I didn't even know what I liked because I never tried anything. So it's like having a sample platter of a whole bunch of different flavors to find which one resonates with you and what would you like to do.
But what was it that excited you so much initially?
I think that the happiness that the people were, they had this glow of health and happiness around them. They look different than the people that are frowning sometimes at work, and they're a little bit too serious, taking themselves way too seriously.
Yeah.
Nobody was really taking themselves too seriously. They were there to disconnect from the seriousness and connect with almost being a child again.
So what did you do with that feeling going forward? How did it start to manifest itself in the weeks and months that followed?
Well, I started to develop what I like to call a healthy addiction to the gym. And had to go maybe every time after work. I was going to the gym. As I realized, if I was making it home and I would have food before going to the gym, then I would not be willing to move and go back into my car and go to the gym and work out on a full stomach.
What were some of the things that you were doing at the gym at that time, Alina?
There were a couple of things that resonated with me. The free weights work and some classes that I started to take at Good Life Fitness.
Okay.
And most of it started to resonate with me, the yoga, Pilates-based exercises. Mm-hmm. And it was at some point, one of the girls that was teaching classes there said to me, well, you come here every day, you take this class every day. I think that maybe at some point, maybe you want to get trained to teach this class because you're here all the time and you might as well start learning how to teach these classes. And one thing about me is just like I'm a slight bit competitive. When somebody's throwing a little challenge at me, I'm having a hard time saying no. Mm-hmm. And although sometimes, I'm thinking in my head, am I going to be able to do this? What if I fall flat on my face and I'm not any good at this. But I think we all have some doubts when we start some new projects. What if I'm not good at this? Sometimes it's called the imposter syndrome, that you're thinking that you're not good enough to be in front of people and lead them.
Yeah.
And I took the challenge and I took the training, and it was a long road of starting to cross that barrier that is between being in front of people versus being one of the crowd. Because then the headlights are on you, so you have to be the best you can, do the best you can. And that is a process, and that teaches people a lot of patience and being humble and being able to laugh at yourself when you're less than that perfection that you imagine you could be.
It seems to me a pretty big leap to go from not really having exercised or not having that part of your life, which I think is more or less what you said about when you started going to the gym. Is that fair? Yes. And that you got there and you sensed the energy and the vitality and just sort of the healthy environment, to go from not having that be a part of your reality to discovering it, to the initial curiosity, to making the decision to step forward in kind of a leadership role to equip yourself to teach it. How aware were you of how quickly and how deeply those roots were taking hold sort of in your spirit and your thoughts?
It wasn't a very quick process. From the day that I started to go to the gym to the day that I started to teach were over 2 years. So it was a slow process of getting fit and getting a little bit, building the confidence that I can do this. And then having a little doubts every step of the way, having some doubts that, what if I'm not really good at this? What then? And then you have to mitigate those voices in your head and stop being in your head and start believing that whatever you dream of doing and dream of being, it can happen. You have to be the first person that believes, and that I usually work with people one-on-one and tell them, I want to be the second person in your corner. You have to be the first person. I cannot do that job for you, but I can be the second person.
How did this chapter of your life start to manifest itself into what ultimately became a career change for you, Alina?
Well, at the time when I started to train and to become first a fitness instructor, I had a corporate job. And I was going to school to learn about business. So one night per week I would go to school, and I would work about 60 hours a week on top of learning how to do this fitness instructor. That would have been for me the hobby, the thing that would balance my life. So the recession started to happen, and the job stage started to change and shift, and I found myself without a job and with a new path and a new opportunity without a corporate job. And I was thinking, what if this is a sign that I have to take the path less traveled and see what's behind that door, and if there's anything there on that path. So when I embarked teaching classes, I started to be very, very curious about yoga, about mind-body connection, about meditation, about Pilates. And all of a sudden, I found myself in that perpetual circle that the more you know you don't know, the more you want to know, and you keep going, and it's a lifelong path of learning and sharing and impacting some other people's lives.
What were some of the first steps that you needed to take? Or maybe, let me put it this way, maybe some of the hurdles that at the time seemed to be the most potentially imposing to you in terms of taking this growing and developing interest, but then actually turning it into a business. What stood in your way as the biggest challenges at that time?
I'm going to say that the challenge was pacing myself. The thirst for knowledge was a lot higher than my ability to participate in those courses and to pay for them. So I had to pace myself and make a realistic rather plan than a wish list, like a Christmas wish list, versus a realistic plan where I think that the business education started to kick in and to start planning ahead in a reasonable manner that I would be able to incorporate what I'm learning right away and then have some personal feedback and some feedback from other people, and then to see where am I going rather than thinking that I know where I'm going.
So moving forward, but allowing the path to show itself to you as you go.
Yes.
That's a tricky balance, is it not?
It is very tricky balance because we have a tendency to question our gut intelligence and our gut feelings. And we want to justify everything, and we want a scientific proof for everything that happens around us and within our lives, and have a justification for our choices, if you wish. And I had to stop apologizing for my choices to those that may have not necessarily been the biggest supporters in this journey, because sometimes, we're very easy to label a career change as a midlife crisis or you're going through a phase. I'm going through a phase that lasted almost 11 years, and I'm still going through this phase, and I'm still enjoying every minute of this phase with all the challenges that are coming my way.
To whom or to what did you sense yourself apologizing to, or feeling like you maybe needed to, that you had to process your past to open this path up for you?
Well, I'm not really sure that I want to go that path right now, because some of those that were not necessarily the biggest fans of this path may have come back and may have asked for advice, for health and wellness advice, a few years after not necessarily supporting my choices. So I would like to say that it took them some time to become believers that I can do this, that I'm good at this, that I love doing this. And when you love what you do and do what you love, then it doesn't really feel like work any longer. It feels like you're stepping into your life's mission, your life's purpose, and you find purpose in every word and in every action that you're taking. And that's what I think right now.
I'm curious what your description is, Alina, of how you knew that it was different that way. And to give it context, I run into a lot of people that hear some version of what you just mentioned, of when you're fulfilling your purpose and you're really doing the work that you feel as if you were put here to do, that it's a game changer. But so many people struggle with understanding what that is for them. And so if I go back to the beginning of our conversation where you were, as a younger woman, thinking about what options you had professionally and going forward and ultimately chose engineering, then later in life, this choice kind of finds its way to you. How did it feel different, and how did you know that you had found what you were really deeply passionate about doing?
Well, how do you know? I think your entire demeanor is changing. You start glowing in a way. You start breathing. You start feeling like you're home without having been home before, because you didn't have a home before and you didn't know what home feels like. So when you start feeling, because right now we all like to travel here and there, but if we like being home, the moment we step into the house, some whoosh of relief, some familiarity and some coziness starts happening that you're home. I would like to say that that's the same with the career choices. We start feeling at home, we start feeling at ease, we start feeling that we're not struggling.
Yeah, we don't suck our stomach in quite as much, right?
Yes, absolutely. We learn how to stand up tall without sucking the stomach and dropping the shoulders and doing this and doing that and creating a thought process on how we're supposed to be. We just know that we are.
How has the work that you do to help others helped you to continue to learn about yourself and challenge yourself with new things? What's that balance been like?
Well, there are parts of what I do that are very specialized, that are ultra specialized. To just give you an example, I may have not mentioned just yet that on my career path I chose becoming a yoga therapist, and that's where healthcare and yoga are starting to have a bridge, and the bridge is part science and part art. So you know that you're working with a human that has a back problem, for instance, and there's another human that you can work with another back problem, that those two back problems are not similar, that may originate from different type of problems. So right now, one of the most challenging and rewarding parts of what I do is working with a physiotherapy rehabilitation place that I'm working with a lady that was in a severe, very traumatic car accident almost a year ago, where the car rolled over a few times and she had multiple trauma. And somehow she wanted to do yoga for her rehabilitation, and I was asked to provide a treatment plan. And that incorporated a lot of the stuff that I have been studying for all these years. And one of those is going beyond the physical and working with the nervous system. And it's called I Rest Yoga Nidra meditation. And just to give you a very quick story, this person has a scar tissue from the breastbone all the way to the belly button because all her internal organs were pulled out to find the bleeder. She was bleeding internally. They decided to remove her spleen in the operating room, and then she was on opioids, which is quite a bit of a crisis right now, until I believe March, when we started to work together. And I had the privilege and the opportunity to guide her through the withdrawal symptoms and through this recovery process, that it's still going on and still ongoing. But what's very interesting about this meditation, it can be customized for a certain issue that the patient has. For instance, she was going, after being off opioids, she was going to have dental surgery, and she was afraid that she's going to be back on pain medication, and the pain medication is going to put her steps back with her recovery. I recorded with her a specific meditation that was focusing on the mouth sensations and focusing on the opposite sensations in the mouth. And I am proud to say that after she came out of surgery, never once did she take medication. Did she have it? Yes. Did she choose to take it? No. She chose the meditation and see if that works.
Wow.
And it worked for her. So this is part of probably the most rewarding part of what I do right now. To guide another human through their recovery process and have the physiotherapist that is supervising the process attributing most of the recovery to the treatment plan that I submitted individualized for her. So this is quite some progress that we're making in our society to incorporate this as a recovery process.
You mentioned iRest Yoga Nidra. iRest is short for integrative restoration. Is that correct?
Very good.
What would be the description of Yoga Nidra?
Yoga Nidra is what we call an ancient practice that is called the yogic sleep. So while the body is at rest and at ease, we can start going through what we call the koshas or the layers of the human. So if you're thinking the human body being almost like a onion that you can peel the layers, you go one by one, or like the nesting dolls, the Russian nesting dolls.
Sure.
You go one by one through those layers. So long story short is we start with a physical body, and we go all the way to what we call bliss or joy that we all experience in our life, and it's our birthright to experience the joy and to know how to access the joy. And going through those layers, we are experiencing the opposites. There's this belief that nothing is really complete without its opposite. So if you're thinking of opposites, it can be cold or warm, rain or sunny. And if we have pain in our body, there are also body parts that do not experience any pain. So we choose to go back and forth between those areas of interest, opposites, and at some point we try to hold them within our awareness together. Then something magical happens when we try to hold everything in our awareness together.
Why is it so powerful?
Well, I could go into the scientific research, but I'm pretty sure everybody can go there if they want to check the research, the scientific research. It is like I was describing before, the process of coming home.
Right.
Coming home to that birthright of joy, of being, of that. I like to say, we notice that in babies and in toddlers, that they are joyful for no specific reason. They just are. And somehow on the road of becoming complacent with society and school and rules and everything, we start experiencing less and less of that joy and trying to find, it's like I'm drawing from a different experience right now of a yoga teacher trainer. When we ask somebody to give themselves feedback for how did they do, the majority of students will start with what they did not do right. And I'd like to say that the iRest Yoga Nidra is asking us or guiding us towards finding what's right with us and what has never been broken or has never been touched by anything to be anything less by unadulterated joy. So you're finding that joy and peace a little bit more, with more ease. So it's almost like having this switch. When you switch the light on and off, I would like to say that that's almost like when you're stressed, can you find a switch to turn it off and to go back to being, pure being, without thinking, without judging, just being.
There are a few things I wrote down from what you were just saying. When you were talking about, and you've brought it up a couple of different times, Alina, coming home. And as you describe it, I get the sense of almost sort of settling into it, almost finding it, I'll use the word allowing, versus it maybe being the conclusion of a certain quest. What I'm getting at is, I think and explore a lot recently, or around the time that we're having this conversation, about the balance between intention, that what we think we want or want to explore, or changes that we want to affect, versus allowing. And when I hear you talk about coming home and settling back into joy and pure being, and some of the paraphrasing that I'm offering of what you've said, that sounds to me almost more like allowing and acceptance of what is, versus, the intention of moving into something else. Do you see what I'm getting at here? How would you maybe interpret that?
Yes, I'm going to interpret this through the tools that the Iris Yoga Nidra is giving us. So we start with an intention, and the intention is something that supports our life path. Mm-hmm. This practice has been adapted for a military, and is so powerful for military. For a military's purposes, they call it the life's mission. So if you like the life's mission, some people like to be a little bit more pragmatic with the life's mission. Other people like to be a little bit more romantic with the heart's deepest longing or the heartfelt desire. So the intention is supporting the heart deepest longing or the life's mission. The intention is an agreement, a commitment that you're making with yourself that will support your yellow brick road of life's mission or heartfelt desire, to move into, to be home, to come home. And there is another powerful resource that we're using that is called the inner resource. And that is the felt sense of being and well-being that we all experience, at least at some point in our life, that ease of being home, that ease of breathing. And when you guide people through the inner resource throughout this process of Yoga Nidra, you're just weaving the inner resource every time when it's useful for the people doing the class and the meditation class. So I like to say that when you start finding your way, that, hey, my pulse is racing right now, or my mind is racing. What if I go and have a visit with my inner resource right now? And that can be, it doesn't have to be an abstract concept. It can be, yes, I feel great when I'm in a certain room in my house, or in a certain chair, or I'm walking on the beach, or I'm walking my dog, or I'm in the woods, or I'm running. You can invite people, you can invite images in it, and you can create that safe haven of the inner resource. And the more you visit with the inner resource, the easier it is to find that flip of the switch. Okay, I acknowledge in this moment that maybe my heart is racing. I'm starting to have, my mind is starting to spin in some circles that may not be all that productive. And what if I take a moment? I may need to close my eyes or not. I may need to just find a quiet place or not. I may be able to find an inner resource anytime. I like to say it doesn't really have business hours. It's a 24/7 within you, available tool. And then you start gaining some clarity, if you need some clarity about your intention or your intent and your life's path or your life's mission. What do you want to manifest more than anything else in this lifetime? So that's a good question for everybody. And it's open, and it can be a quest. Maybe this year I think I want to manifest this, and this is my life's mission. And maybe 10 years from now my life's mission has changed and is taking me in a different path.
You just touched on exactly what I was going to bring up next, Alina, which was is to allow yourself to evolve and change, and for your intentions and your, I'm looking for the right vocabulary, but just to understand, we morph and change, our ideas change, our wants, our needs and whatnot. And back to where we started 45 minutes or so ago almost, to have that idea of the, what was that phrase that you used again that I love so much? The aura of glamour, or just that, okay, there's a way to live, and then I'll just do this, and then everything will be okay, versus just embracing the fact that it's going to up, down, side, changes, evolving, and then that's all part of the joy. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. One of my senior teachers, she has been teaching since 1971, and she's also a physiotherapist, so I have a tendency to believe what she says, even if I'm not getting it right away. Her favorite word in English is bittersweet. And she said, when you feel that bittersweetness in your life, you know that you're alive. So there's no up without down.
Right.
There's no light without darkness. Everything has an opposite, and learning how to be with those opposites is making the navigating the troubled waters a little bit easier.
Alina, how would you describe what happens in the body, in the nervous system? And you talked about the layers, and getting back to that essence of who you are and of joy and of being. How would you describe what makes that so powerful and effective on a basis to heal? Not just to calm our spirit and quiet our mind and get us more in touch with who we really are and what our life's mission or heart's deepest longing is, but actually to experience physical healing as well. How would you describe why that works as well as it does?
I think that the body and the mind have unbelievable, infinite potential for healing. If that would not be the case, then the placebo effect would not be evident in so many researches.
Sorry to interrupt you, but that's a huge statement that you just made, isn't it? I didn't want to let it just go without somebody hearing that and really thinking about what you just said of the mind and the body and the spirit able to have, I think you said, infinite potential to heal.
Yes.
That's pretty big.
Yes, it is pretty big. And that's starting to touch base with everything that is all right with you, and being okay with things that need healing, and being okay with the process of healing, and being patient with yourself, and being patient with the process and trusting this process of healing. That, we all have our ups and downs, and we all feel at times that we need some healing in certain aspects of our bodies or nervous system or relationships and thoughts. We have a saying in the Ayurveda is a science of life, and it's still the healthcare system in India, that we can experience not only an indigestion of food, an indigestion of thought. And sometimes we have to navigate those waters with what type of indigestion do I have, and thinking that everything has some stages that is coming and has a birth, a growth, a stability, a decline, and a death. And that's valid for the thoughts too. And that's valid for many things in our lives. So we have to, at some point, sitting with ourselves to maybe notice what's the stage of these things in our life. Are they growing? Are they stable? Are they declining? Are we able to maybe not manifest attachment to the status quo, so we can let go of an attachment, and how an attachment can become rather a preference than an attachment. And then things are starting to become more fluid in our bodies, in our nervous systems, in our lives, and we start experiencing the state of flow. Then everything seems to be happening with ease. You don't need to make things happen. They are coming your way. But that's not to say if they're coming your way, don't expect somebody to put those in your lap and say, hey, here it is. You have to recognize that you're in that flow, and here's an opportunity. I usually, when I mentor the students, I'm saying, hey, it is an opportunity. And it may be something you like or something that you don't like, but you don't want to regret not taking it to see if you like it or you don't like it, resonates or doesn't resonate with you. Like, opportunity comes, are you ready? Jump on the bandwagon. If it's not your opportunity, don't be afraid to get off the bandwagon at the first stop.
It sounds like you're happy that you got on the bandwagon that you did when you made that change about a decade or so ago. I'm thinking back to one of the many things that you shared earlier, Alina, about the more you know, the more that you realize you don't know. And I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface in what we could talk about. But it's all really very fascinating, isn't it? And I gather that you are happy to be in a place where you realize that you're going to continue to learn and peel away layers of the onion and discover more for the entire rest of your journey. It sounds like a pretty good bandwagon to be on.
Well, yes, it does. And I think that every human needs to continue to learn and be open to learning. And that is what makes us so wonderful as humans, that we can learn. And there is no such thing as you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Age is just a number, and you can be consumed by your age, and nobody does this at my age. Or you can be like a dog, that they still have that puppy spark in them, that they want to play and they want to be truthful to that spirit that never ages.
That's a wonderful place to leave it. Alina, thank you so much for making the time to do this and for sharing so openly so much of your journey. I'm sure that it's going to help people that listen to it, and I hope that they'll reach out to you and if they've got questions or to look to become a client or something along those lines. But really deeply appreciate you sharing so openly, and thank you for this time today.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for having me.
You can connect with Alina by visiting her at her website, which is all one word, alivebyalina.com. Her first name is spelled A-L-I-N-A. That's N as in Nancy. A-L-I-N-A. So alivebyalina.com. Once you're there, you'll find links to her Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram feeds, or just look for episode 80 at noschedulemanpodcast.com, and you'll find links to connect with Alina. If you liked her story in this episode, I'm pretty sure that you'll also enjoy these episodes, which all involve empowering women who shifted trajectory, both personally and professionally, at some sort of a midway point through their lives, not unlike what Alina did. So the first one that comes to mind is episode 76, called Creating Miracles, with Nicole Winter. Episode 75 also popped into my awareness thinking about Beth Allen and her journey, which we call Flush the Fear. Beth does some really cool stuff now and told a great story of how she recognized that the path that she had developed going through school and in the early part of her life was not how she wanted to carry on the second half of her life. That's episode 75 with Beth Allen. And episode 69 with Sue Kerr, which is called Mastering Fear. Sue's been on the podcast a couple of different times, and they're both excellent. I think she was also in episode 22, if I'm not mistaken. But you can find those and all the past episodes worldwide on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and at noschedulemanpodcast.com. I think you can also find us on iHeartRadio and Google Play Music. If you'd like to connect with me, just look for No Schedule Man on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, or visit me at kevinbulmer.com. You can learn more about my speaking, small business marketing, and mindset coaching and other content there. And I hope you'll jump on my email update list so we can keep in touch that way. Thanks so much for listening. If you found this helpful, please subscribe and do tell a friend. I hope to have you here again next time on Journeys with the No Schedule Man.
Just a little deja vu.